I never thought it would come to this. One moment I was sitting in my favorite chair by the window, watching the leaves outside fluttering in the breeze, and the next I was holding back tears, trying to make sense of the slap I'd just received. And the words, those words still echo in my ears. Give me the keys, or I'll take them from you. I've lived through a lot, but nothing prepared me for this. My son's wife, my daughter-in-law, the woman I had welcomed into my home, treated like a daughter. She slapped me and demanded my house keys. I was stunned, confused, and heartbroken. How could she? What did I do to deserve that? And then, my mind began to race, picking through memories, trying to understand the shift in our relationship. There had been little signs, small things I tried to ignore. Perhaps I shouldn't have. But this was too much. It had all started so innocently. My son, Daniel, and his new wife, Alicia, had recently moved into the guest house on our property. At first it seemed like a blessing. I had never had a daughter, and while Daniel and I had our differences, there was something about Alicia that made me feel like I could finally have that close, familial bond I'd always wanted. She was polite, respectful, and for the most part, kind-hearted. Her smile could light up a room, and her laugh was contagious. I'll never forget the first dinner we had together after they moved in. Alicia had cooked a huge spread, lasagna, salad, garlic bread, and even a homemade apple pie for dessert. It was clear that she cared about making us feel welcome. She and Daniel had been dating for a few years before they got married, and I had watched her grow into this beautiful young woman. So, when they asked to move onto our property, I was more than happy to oblige. My husband had passed years ago, and it felt nice having the company. Our days together were filled with laughter, shared meals, and even small conversations that, at the time, felt like we were building something lasting. But over time, I began to notice changes, subtle ones. It started with Alicia becoming more distant. At first, I thought it was just the stress of adjusting to married life, and I was happy to give her space. I've always tried to be a good listener, always the one who offers advice when asked, never intruding. But something in her demeanor shifted, and it wasn't just me. Daniel seemed more withdrawn, too. They would still come over for dinner, but the warmth between us had cooled. The conversations weren't as easy, the laughter less frequent. When we sat at the dinner table, there was often an uncomfortable silence after the initial pleasantries. Alicia's smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. Daniel was quieter than usual, often looking down at his plate, only responding with a short yeah or no when asked a question. I couldn't put my finger on it. My mind kept telling me that maybe I was overthinking it. But deep down, a knot of unease formed, and every time I saw Alicia, there was this weight in the pit of my stomach. I tried to keep the peace, to focus on the good things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface. I remember one particular evening when I noticed the first real sign of tension. Daniel had come over after work, but Alicia didn't join us for dinner. She said she wasn't feeling well, which wasn't like her. Normally, she would have insisted on helping in the kitchen, always so eager to be part of whatever was happening. But that night, she remained in their guest house, barely even peeking her head out when I checked in on her. "Is everything okay with Alicia?" I asked Daniel, trying to keep my tone light. He just nodded, his lips pressed into a thin line. "She's fine, Mom. She's just a little tired," he said. But his voice lacked the conviction it usually had. But I didn't press him. After all, they were adults, and I didn't want to pry into their marriage. Still, the uneasy feeling remained. Over the next few weeks, I tried my best to maintain the routine. I continued inviting them over for meals, trying to reintroduce the warmth we'd once shared. But Alicia's coldness was undeniable, and it hurt. I could see how she would avoid eye contact with me, or how she would always find a way to disappear into their guest house the moment dinner was over. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner, Alicia caught my eye as I was cleaning up the table. There was something in her gaze, a flicker of something unspoken. For a moment, I thought she might say something, but she just turned away. My heart sank. And then came the day I'll never forget. It started like any other morning. I was in the kitchen, preparing my coffee, when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Alicia standing there, her arms crossed, a look of frustration on her face. "I need the keys to the house," she said, her voice surprisingly stern. I paused, trying to process what she meant. "What are you talking about, sweetheart?" "The keys. I need them now," she repeated, her voice rising a little. "Why?" I asked, genuinely confused. "What's going on?" She stepped closer, her expression hardening. "You don't need to know. Just give me the keys, or I'll take them from you." My mind raced. Was this a joke? Was she angry about something that had happened the night before? But before I could process my thoughts, the slap came, sharp and sudden, across my cheek. I froze, my hand instinctively rising to my face. The sting from her slap was still pulsing through my skin as she stood there, looking at me with cold eyes, waiting for me to hand over the keys. "Give them to me," she demanded again, voice steady, as though she'd done nothing wrong. I stood there, my hand still pressed to my cheek, trying to process what had just happened. It was as if the world had gone silent around me. The slap, so sudden, so shocking, echoed in my ears, and for a moment I felt like I was standing outside my own body, watching myself in disbelief. I had never, in all the years I'd known Alicia, imagined that she could do something like that. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was too stunned, too hurt to feel anything but a deep, painful confusion. This was my home, my safe place, and here she was, standing on my doorstep, demanding my keys as though it was her right. But the slap, that slap told me everything I needed to know. Something was terribly wrong, and it wasn't just about the keys. For a second I thought about calling Daniel, asking him what was going on, but I stopped myself. I didn't want to involve him just yet. This wasn't about him. This was about me and Alicia, and I needed to understand why she had crossed that line. "Why did you do that?" My voice trembled slightly, but I wasn't going to back down. I deserved an explanation. "Why would you slap me like that, Alicia?" She didn't respond at first. Her eyes flicked down to the ground, then back up to meet mine. And for the first time in a long time, I saw something shift in her gaze. There was no remorse, no apology, just a cold, almost calculating look. I said, "Give me the keys," she repeated, her tone more forceful now. "You're not welcome here anymore." "I want you out." I felt my heart lurch at her words. "Out?" I whispered, more to myself than to her. "What do you mean, out? This is my home." Alicia took a step forward, closing the space between us. "You heard me," she said. "I'm done with you. Done with all of this. I'm taking control now, and you need to leave. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. You're a burden, and I want you out of my life." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my knees wobble, my legs giving way as though the floor had been ripped out from beneath me. How had it come to this? Where was the warmth we once shared? Where was the woman I had welcomed into my home, the one I had treated like family? This wasn't her. This wasn't the Alicia I knew. I could feel my breath quickening, but I refused to cry. No, I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Not now. Not when I had no idea what was really happening. "Is this about Daniel?" I finally asked, my voice breaking through the tension between us. "Is he behind this? Did he tell you to do this?" Alicia's expression didn't change. "This is about me," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "I'm tired of being the good little wife. I'm tired of pretending to care about you when you've done nothing but make my life harder. I deserve better, and you're not part of that anymore." I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. Was she serious? What had I ever done to her to deserve this? Sure, I had my moments, my imperfections, but I loved her as if she were my own daughter. How could she stand there and say such things to me in my own home? The silence between us grew thick and heavy. I could feel my world cracking piece by piece as I realized that I might have been blind to something far worse than I'd ever imagined. Alicia wasn't just upset with me. She was angry at me for existing in her life, for being a reminder of the life she couldn't control. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger, not yet, but it was a cold, calculating resolve. If Alicia thought she could throw me out of my own home, if she thought she could just walk in here and demand everything I had worked for, she was gravely mistaken. "I won't give you the keys," I said, my voice steady now. "Not until you tell me the truth." "Why are you doing this, Alicia? What's really going on?" She stared at me for a moment, her eyes narrowing, and then, for the briefest moment, I saw something flicker, something almost human in her eyes. Regret? Sorrow? I couldn't tell, but it was there, and then it was gone, replaced by that cold, impersonal look. "I don't owe you any explanations," she said, her tone final. "Just stay out of my way and maybe things will be easier for both of us." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked out of the house, leaving me standing there, speechless. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went through the motions, moving through my house like a stranger in my own life. I couldn't shake the feeling of Alicia's slap burning on my cheek, the coldness in her voice, the hurtful words she had said. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. How had things gotten so out of hand? I spent hours sitting in my living room, my hands folded in my lap, staring at the walls that had once felt so full of love. How had I missed the signs, the small shifts, the cold glances, the subtle withdrawal that had built up over time? I had always prided myself on being a perceptive mother, but somehow I had failed to see the storm brewing right in front of me. What had gone wrong? Where had I failed? And more importantly, what was Alicia hiding? This wasn't just about the keys. It couldn't be. I didn't know it yet, but Alicia's slap had only been the beginning. That was the moment everything changed. The moment I realized that nothing was as it seemed, and that the people I had trusted most might not be the people I thought they were, and the truth was about to come crashing down, whether I was ready for it or not. The days that followed Alicia's slap were filled with a kind of stunned silence that I couldn't quite escape. I tried to go about my usual routine, cooking meals, cleaning, sitting in my chair by the window, but there was a heaviness in the air, an invisible weight pressing down on my chest. I knew I couldn't pretend that things were normal anymore, not after everything that had happened, not after Alicia's cold, hurtful words. But it wasn't just her that I was worried about. It was Daniel, my son, the one person in the world I thought I knew better than anyone. I hadn't spoken to him since that morning. I couldn't. I needed time to process. But time wasn't on my side. I had never been one to hold grudges. I was always the peacemaker, the one who believed that love and forgiveness could heal any wound. But this was something different. It wasn't just a disagreement. It was betrayal. Something deeper was at play, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The next evening, after a long, sleepless night, I decided to go over to their guest house. I hadn't seen Alicia all day, and Daniel, well, he hadn't been around either. But I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them sitting alone in my house, stewing over what had happened. I walked across the yard, the familiar crunch of gravel underfoot feeling strangely loud in the stillness of the evening. The sky was a soft shade of pink, the sun dipping low behind the trees. I didn't know what to expect when I knocked on their door, but I was determined to find out the truth. When Alicia opened the door, her face was impassive, as if nothing had ever happened. Her expression was the same as it had been the day she'd slapped me. Cold, distant, unfeeling. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. "I need to understand why you did that, why you slapped me, Alicia." For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just stood there, her arms crossed, looking at me like I was some sort of inconvenience. I felt a pang in my chest, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't about my feelings anymore. It was about getting to the truth. "What is it you want to hear from me?" she finally said, her voice clipped. "I want to know why," I repeated, my heart racing. "What happened between us? What did I do wrong? I thought we were building something good. And now, this." Alicia let out a bitter laugh, a sound so empty it made my stomach turn. "You really want to know?" she asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "You really want to know why I slapped you? Because you never stopped treating me like a little girl. You never let me breathe. You were always there, always hovering, always thinking you knew what was best for me, for Daniel." "Well, I've had enough." Her words stung, but they weren't the full truth. There was something deeper here, something more than just the surface-level anger she was showing. But I didn't push her. "Not yet. Is this about Daniel?" I asked, my voice quiet now. "Has something happened between the two of you?" "I don't understand." Alicia's eyes flickered for just a moment, and that flicker, there it was again, that small sign of vulnerability. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a hard, impenetrable mask. "I don't owe you anything," she said sharply. "Daniel and I have our own lives, and you need to stay out of it." That's when I realized this wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about my son or Alicia's misplaced frustrations. There was something else, something I hadn't seen coming, something much darker. Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning. I knew I had to talk to Daniel. I needed to understand what was really going on. What had Alicia been hiding from me? What was she trying to protect by shutting me out so completely? I couldn't let this fester. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The next morning, I called him. He picked up on the second ring, his voice low, almost too quiet. "Mom? What's up?" "I need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "About Alicia. What's going on with her? I need to know the truth." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then Daniel finally spoke. "Mom, I don't think now's the right time to have this conversation," he said, his voice tight. "Alicia and I have been going through some stuff, but I don't think it's something you need to be involved in." I felt my heart sink at his words. He was shutting me out, again, just like Alicia had. "No, Daniel," I said, my voice firm. "I've been a part of your life since the day you were born. I won't sit by and let you shut me out now. Not when something's wrong. Not when I know something's wrong." There was another long pause. Then, finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice thick with emotion. "Mom, it's not just about Alicia. It's about me too. I've been keeping things from you, and I don't know how to tell you this. But I've been seeing someone else. Someone I shouldn't have. And Alicia knows. She found out, and now everything's falling apart." The words hit me like a wave crashing over me. I sat there frozen, trying to make sense of what Daniel had just said. My son, the one I had always trusted, had been keeping secrets from me. And Alicia, the woman I had welcomed into my home, she knew. She found out? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," Daniel said, his voice barely audible now. "She found out, and she's angry. She's hurt, and I don't blame her. But I don't know how to fix this, Mom. I don't know if I can." I felt my stomach churn with the weight of his words. My son had betrayed her, and now everything was crumbling around me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to lash out at him for not telling me sooner. But I knew that wouldn't help anything. I was left, once again, picking up the pieces of something I hadn't seen falling apart. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking as I stared at the screen. The words Daniel had said were still ringing in my ears, drowning out everything else. "I've been seeing someone else." It hit me harder than I expected. I had always thought of Daniel as the dependable one, the one who would never hurt the people he loved. He had always been so careful, so considerate. But now everything I thought I knew was unraveling before me. For the longest time, I had prided myself on being the kind of mother who could always see the good in my children. I knew their faults, their mistakes, but I believed in them. I believed that no matter what, they could fix things. But this felt different. This was more than just a mistake. It was a betrayal, not just to Alicia, but to me, to the family we had worked so hard to build. And now, standing in the middle of it all, I didn't know how to help. I knew one thing for certain. I had to see him. I had to hear the truth from Daniel himself, not through the phone, not through Alicia's cold words. But part of me feared what I might find. If Alicia was this hurt, if she was this angry, how could I ever make things right? I decided to go to their guest house. I didn't call ahead. I didn't want him to have time to prepare, to hide. I needed to see him as he was, raw and unguarded. As I walked across the yard, the crisp morning air didn't seem to clear my mind. If anything, it made the weight of the situation heavier. With each step, I felt the distance growing between me and my son. How had we gotten here? When I knocked on their door, Daniel opened it almost immediately, his face pale, his eyes bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was disheveled, and there was a weariness in his gaze that made my heart ache. He looked like a man who had been carrying a burden too heavy to bear. And I realized, as I stood there in front of him, that I didn't even know the half of it. "Mom," he said, his voice thick, as if he was struggling to speak. I didn't think you'd come." "I had to," I said softly. "We need to talk. Really talk." He stepped aside and gestured for me to come in, but there was no warmth in the gesture. It felt like a formality, like he was inviting me into a place where both of us were strangers now. I walked in, my eyes immediately finding Alicia. She was sitting at the small dining table, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her gaze locked firmly on the window, avoiding any contact with me. The air in the room was thick with tension, and I could almost taste the bitterness between us. I sat down across from Daniel, the words I had prepared faltering in my throat. There was no easy way to begin this conversation. I had been a mother for so long, but nothing had prepared me for this moment. "I don't know where to start, Mom," Daniel said, breaking the silence. "I don't even know how to explain it to you, but I made a huge mistake." "A huge mistake?" I repeated, feeling the sting of his words. The sharpness in my voice surprised me. "You've been seeing someone else, Daniel. That's not a mistake, that's a betrayal. And Alicia, what about her? You've hurt her. You've hurt us both." "I know," he whispered, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I know, I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. It's been going on for months now. I don't even know how to explain why. I wasn't thinking straight. It started out so innocent, but then it got complicated." "Complicated?" I asked, my voice trembling now. "You don't think this is more than complicated? You've been seeing someone else behind Alicia's back for months, and you call it complicated? You don't get to make excuses for this, Daniel." I could feel my anger rising, but it wasn't just anger, it was disappointment. My son, the man I had raised to be honorable, had betrayed everything we had built. It was hard to reconcile the boy I once knew with the man sitting in front of me. Alicia, still silent, finally stood up and walked toward the door. She didn't look at either of us as she passed, but I could hear the sharpness in her breath, the way her hands were trembling. My heart sank even further. "I'm going to leave for a while," Alicia said, her voice cold and distant. "I can't be here right now." I watched as she walked out of the room, her steps echoing down the hallway, but I didn't follow her. Not yet. This wasn't about Alicia and me. This was about Daniel, and this was my chance to make him face the consequences of his actions. "Why, Daniel?" I asked quietly. "Why would you do this? Why would you risk everything for something like this? You know how hard Alicia has worked to be part of this family. I thought you loved her." "I do love her," he said, his voice breaking now. "I do, but somewhere along the way I got lost. I don't even know who I am anymore. Mom?" I thought I was making the right choices, but I wasn't. And now, I don't know how to fix it. I wanted to reach out to him, to comfort him, to tell him everything would be okay. But I knew better than that. He didn't need comforting right now. He needed to take responsibility for his actions. He needed to understand that love wasn't just about saying the right words. It was about loyalty, honesty, and respect. "I don't know how to help you." "Daniel," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I don't know if I can help you. But I'm not going to stand by and watch you tear apart your marriage, not when I know you're better than this. You have to make it right with Alicia. You have to fix what you've broken." He nodded, his eyes full of regret. "I will, Mom. I swear I will. I don't know where to start." I could see the guilt in his eyes, and I knew he wasn't a lost cause. But what he didn't understand was that this wasn't just about apologizing to Alicia. It was about rebuilding trust, and that would take time. I left their guest house that morning, my heart heavy with the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same. Alicia was gone, Daniel was broken, and our family was in pieces. But somehow I knew that the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. We would have to face the consequences of our actions, all of us. And the truth, however painful, had to come out. The days after my conversation with Daniel felt like I was walking through a fog, each step heavy with the weight of everything I had just learned. I thought I knew my son. I thought I had raised him to understand the value of family, loyalty, and respect. But now, as I sat alone in my living room, the walls of my home seemed to press in closer, like I was suffocating under the reality of what had unfolded. I couldn't shake the image of Alicia walking out that morning, her back turned to me, her steps echoing as she left my home, my family behind. I knew she was hurt, and I couldn't blame her. What had Daniel done? What had they both allowed to happen to the bond we once shared? I had tried so hard to create a space where we could all come together, where we could heal from our own hurts and build something lasting. But now, everything felt broken, irreparably torn apart. That evening, I sat at the dinner table alone, the meal untouched in front of me. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Daniel's admission, Alicia's departure. There was no easy way out of this. I had known that once the truth came to light, the fallout would be inevitable. But nothing prepared me for how deeply it would cut. And yet, as I sat there, something shifted inside me. I had spent so many years trying to protect everyone else's feelings, trying to be the peacemaker, the one who held everything together. But what about me? What about my heart, my well-being? For the first time in a long time, I asked myself whether I had been so caught up in protecting my family's image that I had neglected to protect myself from the pain of their actions. The next few days passed in a blur. I didn't hear from Daniel, and Alicia remained distant. I wasn't sure what to do next, what steps to take. I knew Daniel had promised to fix things, but promises didn't heal wounds. And I didn't know if Alicia could ever forgive him, or if I could forgive him either. Then one afternoon, after a restless sleep, I received a knock at my door. It was Alicia. I wasn't sure what to expect when I opened it, but I was surprised to find her standing there, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. Her eyes were red from crying, and there was a heaviness in her posture, like she was carrying a burden she couldn't quite bear. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. I stepped aside without saying a word, and she entered slowly, her footsteps hesitant, as if she wasn't sure how to navigate the space we once shared. We sat down on the couch, the silence between us stretching out for what felt like an eternity. Neither of us knew where to begin. "I don't know what to say, Auntie," Alicia began, her voice trembling. "I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I could handle everything, but now everything is falling apart and I'm lost. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I can go back to him or if I should. I don't even know if I can trust him anymore." I could feel the weight of her words, the hurt in her voice. I had seen her as a strong woman, someone who could handle anything life threw at her. But now, Sitting in front of me, she seemed like a young girl, broken by the very person she had trusted the most. "I know you're hurt, Alicia," I said, my voice soft, yet steady. "I know you're confused, but you have to make a choice, sweetheart. You can't keep running from this. If you love Daniel, if you still believe in him, you have to decide whether or not you're willing to forgive him." Her eyes filled with tears, and she wiped them away quickly, as though she was ashamed of showing her vulnerability. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "I want to believe in him, but it hurts so much. The trust is gone. It's just gone," I understood. Trust once broken was never the same. And sometimes, no matter how much you wanted to believe in someone, you couldn't. Trust had to be earned. And it had to be rebuilt, slowly, painfully, but steadily. "You can't make this decision alone," I told her. "You need to talk to him. You need to confront him. Don't let this linger. It's not just about what he did. It's about how you're going to move forward. Whether you heal together or apart." She nodded, her hands shaking in her lap. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," she whispered, looking down at her hands. "You are strong enough," I said firmly, placing my hand on hers. "You've always been. But sometimes we need to let go of the pain before we can heal. And sometimes healing means making hard choices." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "Do you think I should forgive him?" I took a deep breath. "I can't tell you what to do, Alicia. Forgiveness is something only you can give. But I do believe people can change. If he's truly sorry, if he's willing to work for it, then it's worth considering. But it's your heart, your decision. Don't let anyone else dictate it for you." Alicia sat quietly, her head lowered, thinking. I could see the internal battle playing out behind her eyes. She wasn't just struggling with the idea of forgiveness. She was struggling with the idea of her own worth. Could she forgive Daniel without losing herself in the process? "I'll talk to him," she said finally, her voice stronger than before. "But I'm not sure where this is going to go." "Just take it one step at a time," I said gently. "And no matter what happens, remember that you deserve to be loved and respected. You deserve honesty. Don't settle for anything less." Alicia nodded, a quiet strength beginning to form in her. She stood up, and for the first time in days, I saw a glimmer of the woman I had once admired, the woman who was capable of standing on her own, even when everything felt impossible. "Thank you," she said, her voice small but sincere. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled at her, my heart full of love and understanding. "You'll be okay, Alicia. You will." She left quietly, and as I watched her walk away, I felt a mixture of sadness and hope. I knew that the road ahead for them, for all of us, wouldn't be easy. But I also knew that there was still a chance for healing. A chance for growth. A chance for forgiveness, if we were all willing to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. The days after Alicia left my house that afternoon were filled with a quiet kind of waiting. Waiting for something to change, waiting for a breakthrough, some sign that we could all move forward from this mess. I tried not to let the uncertainty weigh too heavily on me, but it was hard to ignore the distance between me and Daniel, between me and Alicia. The once harmonious rhythm of our lives had been disrupted, and nothing felt the same anymore. I spent my days moving through the house like a ghost, keeping busy with small tasks, making tea, folding laundry, trimming the plants outside, anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But no matter how much I tried to distract myself, my thoughts always came back to that day. The slap, the broken trust, Daniel's confession, Alicia's pain. It was like a loop that played over and over in my mind, and no matter how much I wished for it to stop, it wouldn't. I wanted to fix things. I wanted to be the one who could pull everyone back together, to make everything right again. But the truth was, I couldn't do it alone. I had to accept that my role had changed, that my involvement in their lives wasn't going to be the same as it had been before. I was no longer just the mother or the mother-in-law. I was a witness to their pain, and I had to respect their choices, even if they led to places I didn't want to go. One evening, just as the sun was setting, I received a call from Daniel. I had been expecting this, though part of me had hoped it wouldn't come. I answered the phone, my heart in my throat. "Mom," Daniel said, his voice strained. "Can we talk?" "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel the tightness in my chest. "What's going on?" There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear him breathing deeply, almost like he was preparing himself for something difficult. "I talked to Alicia," he said finally, his words coming out in a rush. "We had a long conversation and she's willing to try. She's willing to forgive me, but it's not going to be easy. She said she needs time. She needs space to heal." I felt a small weight lift from my chest, but it was quickly replaced by the reality of what that meant. Healing wasn't something that happened overnight. Alicia had been through so much, and even if she had agreed to try again, the wounds wouldn't magically disappear. "I'm glad she's willing to try," I said softly. "But Daniel, you need to understand that this isn't going to be fixed with words. You have to prove it to her. You have to show her that you're truly sorry, that you're committed to making things right." "I know," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I'm going to do whatever it takes, Mom. I don't want to lose her. I can't lose her." His words were desperate, and I knew he meant them. But there was something about the way he said it. The way he spoke of Alicia like she was the only thing that mattered, that made me pause. I knew his heart was in the right place, but I also knew that action spoke louder than words. "You can't just say the right things, Daniel. You need to show up. Every day. You need to be there for her, to listen to her, and to respect her. Trust is fragile. Once it's broken, it takes time to rebuild." He was quiet for a moment, the weight of my words settling between us. Then he spoke again, his voice resolute. "I will, Mom. I swear I will." The next few weeks were filled with ups and downs. Alicia and Daniel had started counseling, and I could see a small shift in their relationship. There were no grand gestures, no quick fixes, but there were moments, small ones, that showed me they were trying. Alicia had started coming around more, and I could see her slowly beginning to open up again, though it was clear that she was still carrying a lot of pain. One afternoon, as I was sitting on the porch with my cup of tea, I saw Alicia walking toward me. She was alone, her face softer than it had been the last time we spoke. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly, her voice hesitant. I set my cup down and motioned for her to sit beside me. I wasn't sure what she wanted to say, but I knew it was time to listen. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she began, her eyes meeting mine. "About what happened, about what I said, about you, and about me." I nodded, not sure where this conversation was headed, but ready to listen with an open heart. "I was angry," Alicia continued, her voice trembling slightly, "and I hurt you. I said things I shouldn't have said, but I also realize now that I was hurting too. I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know how to deal with the pain Daniel caused me, and instead of facing it, I took it out on you." I placed my hand gently on hers, offering her what little comfort I could. "Alicia, it's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be angry. You're human, and what Daniel did was painful. But it's also important to understand that your anger doesn't have to define you." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't want to hurt you. I never did." I squeezed her hand, feeling a weight lift from my chest. "You don't have to apologize, sweetheart. We're family. Families hurt each other sometimes, but it's how we move forward that matters." Alicia smiled weakly, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the woman I had once admired, the one who was strong enough to ask for help, to admit when she was wrong. "I'm not sure where things are going with Daniel," she said quietly, "but I'm willing to try. For the first time, I feel like maybe I can forgive him, and maybe Maybe I can forgive myself too. I nodded, a small tear slipping down my cheek. That's all any of us can do, Alicia. Forgive, learn, and move forward. The road ahead was still uncertain, and I knew there were challenges left to face. But I also knew something had shifted, something profound. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, was a powerful thing. It didn't erase the past, but it allowed room for healing, for growth, for second chances. And as I watched Alicia walk back to the guest house that afternoon, I felt a glimmer of hope. Things weren't perfect. Maybe they never would be. But there was still a chance for redemption, for love, and for the kind of peace that only comes after facing the truth, no matter how painful. The weeks that followed felt like a slow, cautious rebuilding. I watched from the sidelines as Daniel and Alicia took their tentative steps toward mending the fractures in their marriage. There were still moments of awkward silence between them, moments where the hurt seemed too fresh to be ignored. But there were also moments of tenderness, small, fleeting moments that reminded me why they had fallen in love in the first place. I didn't expect miracles. Healing wasn't something that could be rushed. But as I saw them both trying, both admitting their faults and their fears, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was hope for them. And for me too. I spent more time with Alicia in those days. Not to meddle, not to be a constant presence, but because I could see that she needed someone who understood the complexities of forgiveness, the kind that wasn't given freely, but earned slowly over time. We would sit in the garden or on the porch, talking about everything and nothing, and little by little I saw her walls begin to come down. There was no grand declaration of forgiveness, no moment where everything was magically resolved. But there were signs, the way she smiled more often, the way her shoulders relaxed when Daniel was near, the way her eyes began to shine again. One evening, after a long day of gardening, I sat on the porch as the sun dipped low behind the trees. I heard the familiar sound of footsteps approaching, and soon Daniel was standing there, his face filled with a mixture of exhaustion and hope. "Mom," he said softly, sitting down beside me. "I just wanted to thank you for everything, for not giving up on me, for not giving up on us." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw my son again. The boy who had once relied on me for everything. The man who was now learning to stand on his own, to face the consequences of his actions. "You've done the hard part, Daniel," I said quietly. "The rest is up to you. You have to keep showing up every day. Keep proving to Alicia that you're worth her trust." He nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "I will. I swear I will." I placed a hand on his, feeling a quiet peace settle between us. "You don't have to be perfect, Daniel. But you do have to be honest. And you have to listen. Don't just focus on what you think she needs. Ask her what she needs. And then, really hear her." He smiled, the weight in his shoulders easing a little. "I'll do that, Mom. I promise." A few weeks later, Alicia and Daniel invited me over to their guest house for dinner. It wasn't a grand occasion, no special celebration, just a quiet evening of food and conversation. But as I walked in and saw them sitting at the table together, there was something different in the air, something lighter. The tension between them had softened. They were still a little unsure, still navigating the scars of their past, but there was a warmth there that had been missing for so long. I could see the flicker of hope in their eyes, and it made me realize that maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for them to rebuild what had been broken. Over dinner, there were moments of laughter, moments of quiet understanding, and even moments of awkwardness, but that was okay. They were learning, they were growing, and so was I. I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to fix everything. What mattered was that they were trying. They were both trying. As I left their guest house that evening, I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill my lungs. I had watched them both grow, watched them stumble, and watched them rise again. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was honest. And in that, I found peace. A few days later, Daniel called me, his voice filled with emotion. "Mom, I don't know how to say this, but I wanted to let you know that Alicia and I are going to be okay. We've made a decision to move forward, together. We're not there yet, but we're getting there." I felt a smile tug at my lips. I didn't need to know all the details. I didn't need to know exactly how they were going to heal or how long it would take. What mattered was that they were taking the steps, together. "I'm proud of you both," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about showing up every day, loving each other through the hard times." "We will, Mom," Daniel said quietly. "We'll make it work. Thank you." The healing was slow, but it was real. As time passed, Alicia and Daniel found their footing again. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always pretty, but they were learning to trust each other again, and that was enough. I had learned something too, something I hadn't expected. I had spent so much of my life trying to fix everyone else's problems, trying to protect my family from pain. But sometimes, the only thing you can do is let them fall, let them stumble, and then be there when they pick themselves back up. It's not about fixing the broken pieces. It's about loving them through the cracks. As I sat on the porch that evening, the sun setting behind the trees, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The house was quiet, my family was healing, and though the road had been rough, we had come through it stronger. I wasn't sure what the future held for Daniel and Alicia, but I knew one thing for certain: they had a chance. They had a chance to rebuild, to heal, to love again. And as I watched the last rays of the sun disappear behind the horizon, I whispered a quiet prayer. Not for perfection, but for grace, for understanding, for second chances. Life doesn't always go the way we plan. Sometimes we have to watch the people we love make mistakes, fall, and face the consequences of their actions. And sometimes we have to step back and let them figure things out for themselves. But no matter what, love is the thread that can hold us all together, even in the hardest of times. So I'll ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you have been able to forgive? Would you have given them a second chance? Or would you have walked away, knowing that sometimes the only way to heal is by letting go? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you've enjoyed my story, please consider subscribing. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Until next time.